uterus surgery.
Okay.
That's I work on infused elements. So L2, 3, 4. No, L1, 2, 3. And L5, 6. And then they did what is known as decompression, which is when they put in artificial discs in the entire area. In my entire little body. Yeah, so.
Oh, I want everybody. You're not done. Hi, Mark. Darth did that. Mark, said I had Dory.
It was.
It's nice to see. Very nice to see. Wait, I had that whole book every time, so I have to read that. Just say it real slow. You're working. Oh! That's funny. But you're retired, right? That's retirement is quite nice. What? Oh, because I still supervise social workers there. Nine of them. So I'm there a lot, or else I'm building. Yeah. The new construction is amazing. Custom. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. Just done it. Yeah, and they would manage to find Hi. It's nice to see you. Hi, I forgot your name. Just sit one more time. A-N-U. Right? Okay. I know you.
We gather today to remember before God our sister, Peggy Alta Heslop, to give thanks for her life, to commend her remains to God, and to comfort one another in our grief. If you are participating online, please light a candle as a way of joining your prayers with those of us gathered here. Our love for Peggy links us across time and space. As Pepe's ashes are brought forward, we invite you to join in on the refrain of the song. This refrain will also be sung again between the reflections. After a great day and one last glass of scotch, Peggy left us to join the great cloud of witnesses on the night of November 8. She was a giant among women and deeply loved by those who knew her. She was a voracious reader, a staunch humanitarian, a fierce dog lover, wise parent, a mischievous debater, and a witty travel companion. Born in Idaho Falls, Idaho in 1940, as the youngest of 4 daughters, Peg graduated from Idaho Falls High School before moving on to Idaho State University at Pocatello to pursue a degree in education. Shortly after, she was hired over the phone by North St. Paul Maplewood Oakdale Schools as an elementary school teacher and began her teaching career. She returned to Pocatello to complete her first master's degree, which enabled her to transition to special education. She received her second master's degree from St. Mary's University in Minneapolis in counseling psychology and returned to teaching, this time teaching 6th grade. She spent her entire teaching career in North St. Paul Maplewood Oakdale Schools and retired in June of '96. In the fall of 1980, Elaine was hired by the school district to begin a chemical health program. Peg was at the time facilitating chemical health groups for the district, and it was through this hiring that Elaine and Peg met, beginning a decades-long friendship. Upon Peg's retirement, and with the desire of both to relocate, the two built a house in Roseville, which then became the childhood home of Lisa and Dennis. And that was in 2002. Parenting wasn't in Peg's initial retirement plan, but she flourished in the role. And together with Elaine, they raised 2 wonderful, a little too sarcastic, children, known as Pepe to her godchildren. She passed on her humor and argumentation skills with the vigor only she could provide. She will be deeply missed, and her memory deeply cherished by all who loved her, including her sisters, Colleen of New Jersey and Bobby of Idaho, friend and companion Elaine, godchildren Elizabeth and Dennis, and numerous nieces, nephews, family, and friends. She was preceded in death by her parents, Alfred and Dorothy, sister Patricia, 2 nieces, and a nephew. And I would like to add my personal recollection of Peg, sitting on her magnificent recliner throne, tethered to her oxygen, loving, loving.
Welcome. Welcome to all of you here, and welcome to those on live stream as well. We're so glad to have you with us. This has been a celebration way, way overdue, and we're so glad that we can gather today. I want to begin by acknowledging that Kathy Malaki is presiding and officiating. This was Peg's request that Kathy do this, and I'm so grateful and thankful to you. I also want to thank at this time Ann Christ and all of Bradshaw for all your loving kindness, and to Abe Hunter, our pianist. Thank you. Kathy provided a wonderful template for us to talk about Peg. And that being to share memories, and in those memories, pull out a blessing. So I have many memories, but I'm going to focus on 4 of them. As Lisa had written, Peg was a voracious reader, a staunch humanitarian, fierce dog lover, very wise parent, mischievous debater. I must add to that, you had to watch Peg's eyes because you didn't know if you were being hoodwinked or not. She was a witty travel companion and more. She was my friend, she was my companion, she was my co-parent. I want to begin the story part. When I first met Peg and was just hired by the school district, she was already facilitating groups for students with addiction in the school district. So when I walked in, she'd already had it. So I gave her a phone call in August, and she said, well, let's get together for lunch. And so began many lunches of collaboration, of dreaming, and of creating, because those programs had not been done before. At that time, Peg was a special education teacher. She loved teaching. She loved making a difference in the lives of her students. And she reveled when she brought together students who were struggling with addiction and her mildly mentally handicapped. And she did that so often. Those kids would be working together in her classroom. I don't know no other teacher that did that. I don't know. She also, and those of you that know Peg and know her in the school district, did not shy away from challenging authority. There was more than one principal that would take a deep sigh when Peg was in the audience and would raise her hand. I witnessed that a time or two. With all of this, the blessing that Peg gives us is whatever you do, vocationally as well as personally, do what matters to you. Do what gives you joy and creates joy for others. Don't be afraid to question. Don't be afraid to author. Step forward. Peg gave us that. The next story really goes back to her roots. Peg loved to share stories of growing up with her family in Idaho Falls. Her father, who she called Dad, was a sheriff, was a farmer. He grew peas in a state that grew potatoes. And he started the zoo in Idaho Falls. Peg has an incredible photo of him holding 2 bear cubs. But she has so many stories that she shared about Dad in his days of being a sheriff. One which some of you, Peg was also a very staunch politician. We still have 6-foot Paul Wellstone signs in our garage to speak to that, but we cannot get rid of. But her father was the chauffeur for LBJ when he came to Idaho Falls, when he was running with JFK for president. That was one of the stories that she shared. Her mother was a dear soul. She talked about her bottle feeding the lambs on the farm and helping them make lemonade on their front porch at the zoo. That was their own little fast food stand. The other priceless piece about her mother that Peg would say is that when her mom got real angry, watch out. Plates are going to fly in the kitchen. And plates flew in the kitchen. She was a wonderful mother to her 4 daughters and raised four very capable women. Idaho Falls, I don't know if you know, but is really the backyard is Yellowstone National Park. So Peg always shared so many stories about going to the park because they could. Along with growing up with her family, they're her grandparents. She loved them. So the blessing is that family matters. And it's important to reach out, to visit, to make phone calls, and to create memories. Now, with the arrival of Lisa and Dennis, there were some other memories that began. And the one that I want to share is Peg's own creation. Every Christmas Eve, after returning home from Christmas Eve church services, we'd make our traditional route through the neighborhood because they had candles in the neighborhood so that Santa would be sure to find us. So we made our trip. Once we got home, the Christmas elf had always dropped off new pajamas for everyone. So everyone got into their new pajamas. And on one arm of the chair was Lisa. On the other arm of the chair was Dennis. And every Christmas Eve she read The Night Before Christmas, before we all tucked away. She also, around the holidays, and Roger, you're going to especially appreciate this, would have running debates about the stinky fish. As we were a lutefisk family and relished the tradition of having that on Christmas Eve. Peg was not in relishing that tradition. So on to our third story. Peg loved to travel, and fortunately so did I. So most of our trips were road trips, the most frequent to the North Shore of Minnesota. But we also made visits to her sisters, Pat in Seattle, Washington, and her family, Bobby. We were in her family in Idaho, and Colleen out in New Jersey. I was fortunate to go with her to meet all of her sisters. We also made trips to China and to Alaska. But the two most life-changing trips happened in the year 2002 when Peg and I went to the Ukraine and to bring Lisa and Dennis home. Those were the two most incredible trips. And then, once we had them here, we had a number of trips. I'm just going to describe this one. We rented an RV to go see her sister Bobby in Boise, Idaho. Now, the RV was like a mini ark. We had Rosie, the skipper key. We had Ted, the hamster, in his cage. It was neatly fit right into the sink in the back of the RV. And we struck out to Boise, and we made it. And we played in her park, in Yellowstone Park. And that was an incredible trip. The blessing, again, is the importance of taking time to rest as a family, to be patient, and to create memories. Peg was good at this. She was very good. Last thing, I want to talk about Peg's courage, her grace, and her acceptance of her health challenges. Peg was diagnosed with lung cancer in November of 1991. At that time, fortunately, they were able to remove the lung with no chemotherapy, and she was able to live her life going forward. And she recovered and taught after that till June of 1996. After that, Peg always wanted to ride a horse. And so she took horseback riding lessons with her one lung. One Sunday morning, she mounted Clyde, the Clydesdale. Clyde wasn't so excited about Peg being on his back and sent her tumbling, which resulted in a broken pelvis and a shattered hip. Peg was terrified of doctors in the hospitals and was also blessed with some of the most incredible nurses, physical therapists, and I want to name 3 of the doctors who have walked with Peg. The first one was Irene Duckett, Keelan Ham, and our present Sarah Mazig. All three physicians were able to get Peg to laugh and to look forward to those visits. They stood by Peg, they guided her through it, but they also stood by me, and they stood by anyone that was with Peg. They were great. Thank you. The blessing that we receive from this message from Peg is her acceptance of life, grace to continue to live and be vital and be there for all of us with her love, with her wisdom, with her joy, with her sarcasm, and with her smile. Peg, we love you. We've loved you and we always will. And we miss you incredibly. And we are so thankful that we were able to share our life with you.
Today I'll be speaking mostly from my own perspective, although I would like to point out that though these are my own stories and my own memories, the themes are an experience that both Dennis and I share. In thinking on how I might best encapsulate oh my gosh, I just love her so much, what can I say? In thinking on how I might best encapsulate the myriad of blessings which Peg bestowed upon me, I think it best to tell a few stories. Peg was a public school teacher for 36 years, but to me, she was my own personal teacher for, give or take, 21 years. Aside from all the qualities that Mom already mentioned, Pepe was also a dictionary, a thesaurus, an encyclopedia, sometimes a mathematician or a scientist, somehow a sports and musical critiquer, and yes, even at times a theologian. How do you quantify a lifetime of lessons? Pepe taught me to have high hopes. For many years, I was a swimmer. Like all of us who have participated in sports, we have to first learn the basics. Pepe took me to my swim lessons. While I bobbed up and down and practiced kicking, she sat in a chair at the far end of the pool deck and watched me. Here's the thing, I was really not a very good swimmer when I started. I had to redo one of the levels like 3 different times, and I remember very clearly that we had to swim from one end of the pool all the way to the other, non-stop, to pass the level. Every time I stopped, which was at least 3 times, and hung on the lane line, I would look up, and I could see her shaking her head, pointing her finger to the other end of the pool, and I knew I had screwed up. Even from across the pool, I could hear her say, "You're just going to have to try it all over again." And this was a phrase that I heard many, many times during my childhood and up until the day that she died. Pepe always had high hopes for me and for all of us. Pepe taught me what it means to have faith in other people. Most of you remember Pepe sitting in her armchair in the living room. From that chair, she doled out advice, she joked, she argued, she debated. Sometimes she was right and sometimes she was wrong, and I would like to point that out. She listened to essays and watched innumerable videos with saintly patience. If you know the layout of our house, you also know that just off the living room is the dining room, where our piano was kept. I'm a piano player, which you know. From my bench, I actually can't see anything or anyone in the living room but Pepe's chair. So I would gauge whether or not I did well on a piece by looking to see her reaction. Pepe was not a musician, but having a child who played piano, I guess she learned a thing or two, or thought that she did. Whether she made a show of it or not, I would look to her because she listened intently to every single note. Now don't get me wrong, I did not always want to hear her reaction, and actually most times I didn't. But I always sat down at the piano with the faith that Pepe would be listening, because she showed me time and time again that she was, and I knew that I could count on her. And I know that even when I would really want to listen to her, as with all her comments and lessons, Pepe had the faith in me that something was probably getting through. Pepe taught me to love learning. Pepe knew everything. And if she didn't, she would point to the dictionary or encyclopedia or atlas, and we would look it up. Pepe loved to teach, and I loved to ask her questions because it felt like I was accessing all the secrets of the universe. When I went to college, I would call home just to ask her opinion, and boy, did she have a lot of opinions on what I was learning. As a political science major, having someone like Pepe was like striking gold. To how many people can you ask their opinion on 20th century education policy, Lyndon B. Johnson, and Idaho during the aftermath of the Second World War in the same sentence? No matter what the subject, she always had an answer because she loved to teach, and it made me love to learn. What feels most strange to me about Pepe dying is that I still feel like I have so much more to learn from her. I will probably live the rest of my life always having questions that I wish she could answer. But the nature of our existence here, no matter what you believe, is that eventually we all have unanswered questions. And that is where we have been left with the loss of Pepe. I have been reading in a class of mine many texts which have been placed before us with the aim of helping us understand our place in the world and how we might see ourselves in relation to our individual callings. I'd like to read one for you here, as it has greatly helped me to understand the strangeness of this loss. The theologian, Reinhold Niebuhr, wrote in his collection of lectures, The Irony of American History, that, quote, "Nothing that is worth doing can be achieved in our lifetime. Therefore, we must be saved by hope. Nothing which is true or beautiful or good makes complete sense in any immediate context of history. Therefore, we must be saved by faith. Nothing we do, however virtuous, can be accomplished alone. Therefore, we are saved by love. No virtuous act is quite as virtuous from the standpoint of our friend or foe as it is from our standpoint. Therefore, we must be saved by the final form of love, which is forgiveness." Dennis and I are who we are because Pepe had high hopes for us. Dennis and I are who we are because Pepe taught us to have faith that everything we needed to have sorted out would eventually sort itself out. Dennis and I are who we are because we were loved by Pepe. And if the final form of love is forgiveness, then I have to forgive the world from taking Pepe from me and all of us before she could finish teaching us all that she could. This I can do because I know that Pepe had hope, faith, and love for each of us. The lessons she taught, both requested and unsolicited, have made us the people that we are. Godspeed and God bless Pepe, and knock over a vase if you have the time.
Now the problem is that I couldn't hear everything that both of you said, so I might repeat some things. I'm sorry about that. Okay. Well, anyway, this memorial card is so pegged. I can't believe in this obituary, they said, Lisa, you did a great job. This is so her. I met Peg when she lived on the east side. I met Elaine the same year that Elaine met Peg in 1980. And just thinking that, you guys, that Peg was being an elementary teacher, and she was doing groups for kids with chemical health problems. That takes an enormous amount of energy, an enormous amount of conviction. And that's who Peg was. She was never showy about it, but man, was she deep. Anyway, I just think, she was always so compassionate, and I don't know, it feels like this is that live listen thing on my thing. But am I too loud? Because I can't hear booking. Well, anyway, she just had such empathy and such compassion for people. I just think she was amazing. And, she taught for 36 years. Elementary and then 6th grade in the middle school, which, woo, is a little tough. And then, mild to moderate, mentally handicapped kids in high school. So she did a lot. I think, Elaine, you talked about traveling to the North Shore all the time, right? And they would always bring, it was before kids, but with the dogs, but they would always come home with something from the North Shore, real woodsy, you can see that all around their house and all around their yard. And I thought it was so fitting that the urn with Peg's ashes are from, it looks like the North Shore. Very fitting. And Elaine talked about the lung cancer, and just think about that, with COVID, so many people have died, but they expressed that not being able to breathe, right, and how difficult that is, and that she managed for 29 years with one lung. And she didn't piss and moan much. She was pretty much of a trooper. And so I think you said the word courage, and she really did have a lot of courage. I remember when Elaine and Peg built their home in Roseville. A mutual friend of ours, his company built there. And I think this is such a small world. It's on the old Seidenkrantz, it was my great uncle's family farm. And I think, what a small world, I talked about Peg being supportive. I know Elaine mentioned that the best trips she ever took were in 2000 and 2002 to pick up you. And that was quite an adventure to the Ukraine. Not the Ukraine, to Ukraine. We used to call it that, but we don't anymore. Anyway, and they had some bumps in the road, I think, that first trip. And again, Peg was so completely with Elaine about getting Lisa and about getting Dennis. And that wasn't in her original plan. But she loved them very, very much. And both Elaine and Peg fell in love with both kids right off the bat. There's one picture of Lisa was walking and Peg had to go down like this kind of to hold her hand. It's such a sweet picture. And Peg loved watching Lisa and Dennis grow up. She absolutely loved being their second mom. And she was so proud of you both. Whether it was your baptisms or your confirmations or your graduations, she was so proud of you. She loved watching you play the piano, watching you sing, watching you swim. I think you said a story about swimming, but I didn't catch all of it. I'm sorry, so I'm going to have to see what you said. And she loved watching you play baseball and watching you play hockey and watching you play football. But she loved both of you just for who you were, too. It wasn't just the performance. She loved both of you so much. She loved you very much too, Elaine. I don't mean that you were shopping with her. Anyway, but those guys, Lisa and Dennis, really loved Peg too. Lots of times when I would be over there, I think you talked a little bit about Peg's station where she was in that chair because the oxygen was there. And lots of times I was there, not just when they were little, just the last few times I was there too. Lisa or Dennis would be sitting on the armchair of Peg's chair so they could have a conversation. And I just thought to myself, how tender that is. That was so tender. Anyway, this Louis L'Amour court was so her too. Lots of times on the television there would be, old country western, cowboy western TV show that would be on, or TV movie. And I don't know if she was listening or just had that network on, but she loved that. And she was always so caring and always such a good listener. She always would ask you about your life. She always asked about my son, but whoever it was who came into the room, she always asked about your life. she was truly interested, was sincere. And she had always those great comments with her dry sense of humor. You know, she had that dead kind of face, but she made some great comments. She was always patient, and I think we will all miss her, but for Dennis and Lisa and Elaine, I want you to know that she loved you guys so much, she will always be with you in your heart. We will all miss her, but she will always be with you. And if you guys talk to me and I don't hear you, that's because I don't hear. I lost my hearing 2 years ago, so you just have to tap me.
Let us commend Peg to the mercy of God. Into your hands, O God, we commend your servant Peg. In life, you gathered her into your embrace and surrounded her with the beauty of your love, which she shared so generously with all of us. Now, in death, we commit her to you. May she rest in peace. And may we who grieve her loss be comforted by the grace and mercy of her memory, knowing she rests in you. Amen. So in a moment, we're going to do a toast. But we have to find, oh, I see. Okay. And you have a choice. We're going to bring it around. You can take a little cup. For those of you at home, this is your time to get ready. Dennis and Lisa, you have a choice. I believe one has alcohol and one does not. I think the light colored one is alcohol. Is that right? This just seemed to be an appropriate thing for Peg.
I'm going to do something.
Now, I invite you to channel your inner Catherine Hepburn in honor of Peg and all that she gave to us. Toast her with whatever you have before you. If you happen to have cherry Coke or famous grouse, Peg's favorites, all the better. To Peg, with gratitude for a life well lived and love well shared. Yes, indeed. Go now in peace. May your memories of life with Peg be a blessing to you in the days and years to come.